My name's Anthony Robinson. Until recently, I was the billing offering manager at Allstate Insurance Company in Chicago. And just recently, I've transitioned into being the Mainframe Modernization product owner, again at Allstate. So I'm very glad to be presenting today. Thank you all for sticking around, particularly on the last day of the conference and coming along to hear about Mainframe. So first of all, a bit of introduction. I've been with Allstate 15 years. Before that, I worked with Lotus in Cambridge, Mass. I manage Mainframe at Allstate. Allstate is a large US-based insurance company. We sell out of Northbrook. We have operations around the globe in India, Northern Ireland, Chicago, Charlotte, and now Irving down in Texas as well. So we're the largest publicly traded insurance company in the US. We sell products across Canada and the United States. So we're very much at Allstate a large IBM mainframe shop. Long distinguished history running on the mainframe platform. Up until recently, we were very much traditional, using green screen, just industry standard. But 2-3 years ago, SLM, which was our source code management product, was coming to the end of life. And it was very much we needed to get off it and get onto something newer, something better. And kind of along the way, we discovered DevOps. So part of my message today is to kind of show how you can do DevOps on mainframe. Rosalind is in the audience today. Thanks for coming along. She spoke yesterday about infrastructure as code on Z. And while you said that mainframe is different when it needs to be, we don't see mainframe as any different. Z is the same as everything else. So really, we're like many traditional Z shops. We're challenged in terms of our kind of portfolio of developers in terms of their profile. As they reach the end of their career, we're trying to bridge that skills gap. Having college hires coming in, have them working on Z, it's still a hard sell. And as we have our more experienced colleagues to kind of keep them around long enough that they can help share that domain knowledge with our new hires. So we see the mainframe moving more open source, moving towards DevOps, more common tooling. And Rosalind's point yesterday, it's just the same as any other platform. So I enjoy coming to events like this because our mainframe journey with DevOps, we just don't sometimes have the vocabulary to describe it. And we come to an event like this and we suddenly know how to describe it. So we were agile before we were doing agile. So when the company looked around, we moved off our SLM source code system in an agile way before we knew what agile was. We kind of along the way discovered DevOps, and our distributed and cloud foundry colleagues were well ahead of us, and we wanted to catch up and trying to equalize that gap, and we're just first amongst equals. Many of our mainframe engineers are the most distinguished or eminent engineers at the company. So we want them to stick around and actually have new tooling. We still see the mainframe as a platform to develop new services and products at a speed, at a scale that maybe other platforms can't cope. So far from it being a legacy platform, we see it as cutting edge. We see it as a place to build out services and products, and it's actually a revenue generator rather than consuming revenue. I'll just go back one there. So yeah, our journey from a very traditional standing start was we have our own homebrewed deployment system. We used SLM, we used Endeavor, very much industry standard. We knew what we wanted to do with Team Concert and to move towards a more agile way of working. We just didn't know how to do it. And part of our journey is we're still doing it. We come to events like this to show you what we've done, to encourage other people to at least look at starting a DevOps journey on mainframe. It is possible. Is it hard work? Yes. Is it worthwhile? Definitely. And along the way, we've pivoted in terms of what's valuable to the company. A lot of what I've seen this week is it's kind of changed our journey. And instead of finishing off our DevOps transformation, we've kind of taken a rather circuitous approach, but it's actually added a lot of value along the way. So in terms of DevOps, when we started our migration off SLM, we didn't really know what DevOps was. We kind of read about it. And then we very quickly realized that most of the industry was already doing it, very few on Z. And really the more interesting challenge was like day 2 DevOps. And then we kind of discovered that phrase had been coined as well. So really what we're going to try and show you today is some of the work that we've done in Mainframe, where we've vaulted straight from not doing any DevOps to going straight to trying to address the DevOps day 2 problem. and some interesting things along the way. So again, a lot of this is well out there in terms of where DevOps came from. We were aware of all of those methodologies. Culturally, our mainframe shop, our developers were very much Waterfall. We're looking to pivot, to become more agile, to move towards a product mindset as we move towards a more digital transformation effort at Allstate. It's still a hard sell for some of our mainframers, but our journey to DevOps has certainly brought a lot of them along with us. Again, a lot of the motivators, a lot of the drivers for doing DevOps and speed to market, agility, driving down cost, reducing administrative overhead, all the kind of well-known drivers. We were reading about them. Yeah, it's a good reason to do it. And really where we were agile before we were doing agile was that our developers kind of embraced it. They wanted to learn new tools, they wanted a new way of working. So it was rather than something where management sent us the new tools, we kind of advocated and went off and did it ourselves. So despite what everyone else says, we didn't really have a lot of management buy-in. We didn't have any budget. We just did it because we felt empowered. So we were agile, as I say, before we were doing agile. We didn't have a scrum master or product owner. We kind of had that agile mindset. So we kind of were almost operating like a lean startup. And again, people told us that after the event that we were doing it, and we didn't realize that we were. So we stopped along the way, we prototyped it, we demoed it, all the kind of good stuff that you would build with a minimum viable product. We were doing that again before we realized we just didn't have the vocabulary or the expertise to kind of describe it as that. So it kind of empowered us that we were doing the right thing without maybe a lot of the management strictures and maybe a lot of the baggage that maybe goes along with it, that we were kind of doing the right thing. People were coming along with us. We actually rolled out our migration in an agile way. We called them phases rather than sprints, and they were maybe months rather than weeks. But again, it was doing the right thing. We thought we were onto something. What we did was set up a series of change champions, and some of you may have had this before. We kind of called it like Fight Club, where we kind of tapped up people in different teams and said, come and join us. We'll tell you what we're doing, and then it's your job to roll it out within your team, but you're not allowed to go and tell everyone, because if you did, we'd just be overwhelmed by everyone wanting to embrace these new tools and a new way of working. So it was controlled, but uncontrolled at the same time. It was disruptive, but in a very kind of planful way. So we like to be conflicted. We're kind of, we have to do it in such a way that we can be successful. So certainly Allstate's DevOps journey so far, it kind of started very much on the distributed side with .NET. We're a big pivotal cloud foundry shop as well. And they kind of got it, but they built it out really as day one. So it was lots of like freestyle jobs, a lot of really smart people doing really smart things. Maybe security, those kind of things, maybe an afterthought, and then you come to it later on. And really the thing that kind of stood out there is that mainframe DevOps just wasn't even on the roadmap. It was just an afterthought. Mainframe was going away. Why would you do it? It would be wasted work. And we said, no, certainly not. Most of our eminent engineers are on Z, on the mainframe. So if distributed can do it, we can do it better. So we took it as a challenge rather than a threat. So the current state is we're kind of doing pipeline as code on the mainframe with Z. We kind of baked in security from the get-go. So again, we discovered secure DevOps or DevSecOps. That phrase had already been coined. We didn't know what to call it, but we knew that if you're doing DevOps, it should be secured. We're actually making the mainframe a lot more cloudy or cloud-like. So we're moving towards things like Brightside or Zoe, those kind of command line interfaces. We're really trying to also bridge that skills gap as well. So as our profile of developers alters and we have more experienced folks maybe moving out of the business or out of the firm, we're trying to distill a lot of their secret sauce, their expertise, and put it as code. So rather than have people train up with job aids or learning documentation, to actually distill all of that expertise and put it into code. The code is auditable, it's version controlled, and really our journey was we went from 0 to day 2 DevOps and kind of trying to solve some of the more interesting problems and really to try and do it at scale. So on the distributed side, it was very much hundreds or thousands of Jenkins jobs. It's very hard to manage. We wanted to keep it simple, but at the same time, we knew that what we built on the Z side, it would probably be pretty clean code if we did infrastructure or pipeline as code. It would be tightly written, and also if we found vulnerabilities in the code, the Z engineers would be all over it trying to get it fixed. So it also helped us too that the security engineers, their focus was more on maybe Kotlin or some of those newer maybe languages, maybe written by contractors, and you think maybe the risk profile is all of the Z developers are still around, but it has to earn its right to exist at Allstate like everything else. So we can't just trade on past glory and say that the code is secure because it is secure. We had to have evidence to do that. So we hooked it up to the company's security scanning software, and really we like at Allstate, particularly in Z, reusing what we've got. We've got a great mainframe, great hardware, great software on it, and we think rather than buying even more servers is to go off and actually reuse what we've got. So really what we did was to try and reuse a lot of the pipeline technology that our composed or our distributed colleagues had done, was to actually go and reuse that for mainframe. And if we did it in such a way, the more we understood it, the simpler it would be. So really our route was to write it pipeline as code. So the pipeline as well, if you didn't care as a developer for what was in the pipeline, you didn't need to. But if you really wanted to pull back the covers and see the code, we also almost showed it as a roadmap. This is what the pipeline's going to look like. So even though we didn't have some of the steps necessarily done, or we still don't, they're in the pipeline. So it's not just on a PowerPoint slide or up on a screen, it's in the code, in Git, in Team Concert. So with that, the developers can come and look and see if we want to turn on maybe quality scanning, this is how you do it. And the company then can control that at their leisure. We also kind of feel as if we're kind of getting out of that as well, that the technology is becoming mature. So if we want it better governed or audited, we can turn the governance of the pipeline over to the governance team. We don't need to be running it on the Z side. Again, day two issues. Peter Eales, who used to be the worldwide lead there for DevOps adoption at IBM a couple of years ago, he just listed out all of the challenges, and those have been well documented. And we thought, looks way too hard, trying to do it as day one. So really, again, when we come to conferences like this, we kind of see what everyone else has done, and we come to it thinking we're maybe a bit off the pace or really behind, and I think we find sometimes we're not. Everyone's in a similar kind of level of maturity. Some outliers really leading from the front. Rosalind and others have demonstrated, DevOps on Z here. It sets the standard high, I think, in terms of what we aspire to, what we strive to do. We like to come along with some real-world examples and say, yes, big shops like us are actually doing it. So it's an encouragement. It's a shout-out to people who are looking at it. Is it possible? Definitely. Is it hard work? Not so much. It's actually becoming easier. And also, we find that a lot of our distributed colleagues are only too happy to help. They're interested to see what we're doing. We like to be provocative, thought-provoking, and say if we can do it in Z, then our distributed colleagues should be outpacing us. And again, maybe the thought is, with day two DevOps, is maybe how to do it rather than what it is. What is DevOps? I think everyone here knows what DevOps is. They have a good grounding in it, but it's more how to do it at scale, how to measure value streams, measure flow, all of those kind of concepts. I think we're all kind of reaching that kind of common ground, and it almost feels like a tipping point, certainly with mainframe, that it's mainframe DevOps is becoming mainstream, DevOps is becoming mainstream, everyone's kind of coalescing, kind of crowding around core principles, best practices. So I hope to show some of those kind of today. Really, one of the things I've learned today is kind of really, or this week, is around value streams, what's valuable to a company. And certainly for us at Allstate, it was around security. That's the thing that kind of keeps us awake at night, trying to secure our applications. And again, it was very much driven from the cloud world, that they wanted to be able to do almost continuous deployments, pushes to production, but in a secured way as well. And we thought, well, we have to earn the right to do that too. We need to be secure. Mainframe code should be secure. We just, as I said, can't trade on past glories. It has to be evidence or data-driven that the code is secure, and if not, we'll fix it, remediate it quickly. So really, that was the pipeline that the company built out for secure DevOps, and the kind of thing that stood out to me was there was no mainframe on it. So lots of Jenkins, lots of Pivotal Tracker, lots of WebSphere. You see Agent Smith and Compliance Buddy. Those are some internal kind of security and auditing tools that Allstate built for cloud. And we thought, well, really, we should be able to use them for mainframe too. So we kind of went to who wrote the slide and said, you need to put mainframe onto that. We're just the same as everything else. And if you're struggling to understand why that one with the Linux penguin on there, we're kind of pretty Linuxy as well. So if you want to put us on there, put us beside the Linux. We're just the same as everyone else. So we're running Unix on the mainframe, USS. We're no different from anything else. So really, the idea is with VeraCode there, it's like an external source code scanning system. So we push our code out through Agent Smith, and then the results of that are sent back to Compliance Buddy. So anyone there who's maybe listening to the auditors before lunch, Deloitte, we like the idea at Allstate, and particularly in Z, is kind of continuous compliance. We don't like the idea of stopping and then doing it after the event or in a last-minute rush before we push to production. We like the idea of being able to continuously monitor our compliance. So Compliance Buddy looks at source code, SOX compliance issues, JIRA stories, testing results. It's almost like our internal compliance tool. So it's kind of a natural fit for cloud, but as we make our mainframe more cloud-like, we think we should be able to do the same thing as well. So again, how you do DevOps, a lot of these things are kind of well known. We decided to kind of use that framework as well, derived by Jez. Where we're at with Allstate in terms of how we approached it, we moved off our SCLM system and we moved my former application, the billing application, which is the biggest, most complicated one. We did that first. It was kind of a statement of intent. People looked at us and said we were crazy. Why would we do it that way? And it was really, we had a lot of empowered developers. They wanted to make it successful, and really it was kind of a challenge to the rest of the organization. If billing could do it first, well then every other application was going to be easier. So we kind of took the risk on. We kind of pump primed it and kind of put it at the beginning of the pipeline and did the billing one first. We're just in the final stages of moving all of our Z developers over to Team Concert. We like Team Concert. It works really well for us. We're interested in Git as well. And again, as part of mainframe, we're kind of agnostic about technology. We use what is suitable. And to Rosalind's point yesterday, it's all about the code. So we like infrastructure as code, pipeline as code, compliance as code. We think that paradigm is well set in the industry now. And it kind of feels good. Our developers, they're kind of lining up with their distributed colleagues. And really, we kind of see ourselves as peers. It's not us and them. The Z or mainframe's just the same as everything else. So really, we built it out for Waterfall because as part of our journey, we were always kind of compromising or kind of choosing our battles to try and fight and win. So really, we weren't going to be able to do all of this necessarily and move the whole mainframe Z world over to Agile quickly. So we kind of, with Team Concert, we kind of built it out in a flexible way. We future-proofed it. So we like the idea of having succession planning, future-proofing, that while we could start in Waterfall, as we kind of understood Agile better, we could start transitioning over and people could move at their own speed. And we were mindful, as was stated this morning, it's more people kind of embracing it rather than having it inflicted on them. So we would let people experiment with Agile, but at the same time, they still had the Waterfall background to fall back on. So they use whichever methodology is appropriate, whichever is most cost effective. So some work is done Agile, others is done as Waterfall, but Team Concert and the pipelines we've been building out kind of give us that flexibility. The future state then is probably moving towards more like hybrid cloud, making the mainframe more cloud-like, making it easier to integrate with our other distributed and cloud platforms. We're integrating it more deeply with JIRA and some of the other tools that the company uses as part of Agile, so Confluence, all those kind of good things. So our developers, they're using Team Concert with RDZ. It's an Eclipse-based interface, so really we went all in. We didn't try to let our developers use green screen with the new source code system or with pipelines. We went all in, but at the same time, we didn't completely deprive them of green screen. So if there's some technology or some patterns that they find it useful for, they use green screen. But for development on Team Concert, they all use RDZ and increasingly IDZ as well. So we're also getting interested in building out APIs in Z as well. So the developers, a lot of it, as I look back on it, was more cultural. It was we've moved the whole organization away from green screen towards a new way of working, but like Agile, we don't get hung up on tooling. It's just a means to an end. And it was kind of us signaling to our Z developers that we're heavily invested in them. We see them as on a platform that's successful and is future-proofed. And it was kind of a statement of intent that the mainframe is in good health at Allstate. And really, the developers, you've earned the right to those tools, you deserve it. You've laboured long and hard with older technology, but it's served us well. Now's the time to move on. Similarly, using Z-Unit, we also see it as a future-proofing or investing in our future as well. With the modern tooling, IBM and other vendors are kind of more of a continuous delivery model. Again, that kind of suits us too, that some of our developers are bleeding edge. They like testing out new features. As soon as it arrives, it drops, it's installed. They want to be prototyping, trying it. Others, less so, it's kind of sure and steady. So that kind of model works well for us. We like to run prototypes, experiments, MVPs with both features on Team Concert and on the client side as well. If it reaches mainstream and people like using it, then we roll it out. But again, we don't inflict it. We let people kind of find it themselves. We kind of run lunches and learns, community of practice. We do a lot of hands-on demoing, prototyping, showing it. We like to do real live demos. So for anyone who's not familiar, that's what RDZ, IDZ looks like. It's kind of Eclipse-based, kind of a modern paradigm. We also have some of our developers using Visual Studio Code as well. So really, again, we're not fussy around the technology. We work with what people find appropriate. It's what they're happiest to use. So in terms of deployment tools, this is probably still a work in progress. So Allstate's been served well for many years by our homebrewed in-house deployment system, APTF. We've run it for about 25 years, 22 years, so it's kind of getting to end of life. So we're planning to move on to UrbanCode Deploy. We did a proof of concept of it there a couple of years ago. And again, that turned out to be very successful. But again, we chose our battles. We thought that certainly in the billing application, we could pull further and further ahead and leave the rest of our Z developers behind. And again, that was maybe the value stream. It was more useful, more valuable, maybe for the company to slow down, for us to slow down, to bring all of the developer community with us, rather than us becoming like an outlier team who are pulling further and further away. So with that, we kind of parked some of the UrbanCode Deploy work, and we're kind of picking it up again. So that's really based on the community of developers, now all using pipelines, all moving towards DevOps, and then UrbanCode is a good fit for us. So it really still is very much a work in progress. It's not completed, but the UrbanCode is a useful addition to our toolkit. And again, it's that kind of pipeline as code. We're experienced users of Jenkins now. And really what sold it for our developer community was when we told them they're going to have to be using pipeline technology, a lot of it is, what do I need to know? And it was, you don't need to know anything. So really the security scanning was the kind of the bit that really was most valuable for the company. If you wanted to scan your mainframe code, you just pushed it into the Jenkins pipeline. It seemed obvious after the event, but not at the time. People thought they would have to do it manually. So pushing it out of Team Concert and kicking off a Jenkins job scanned the code through Agent Smith and reported results back. So it was kind of win-win. Now we know that that was probably a large value stream. It was highly valuable to the company, so much so that we've probably outpaced our distributed colleagues. While they had done the day one approach of freestyle jobs, we went straight to day two with infrastructure as code, pipeline as code, and kind of got to the right answer first. So you imagine it didn't make us very popular, but it was kind of a good thing for our leadership in terms of like even the Z guys are doing this and they're fully compliant, so everyone else get a move on. So with that, it was almost like a feedback loop. Then the developers on non-Z thought, well, we're being outperformed here. So it was a good feedback loop, and it's kind of spurred some healthy and unhealthy competition. But we're glad we did it. And certainly, again, the pipeline. It's just this is what we're trying to do is build out either using open source tooling, Team Concert, IDZ, dependency-based build. It's all the kind of good stuff that Rosalind and others have spoken about. It's becoming mainstream. It is mainstream, but the challenge is, where do you start? And however small at Allstate, once it's up and running, then it also gets traction. It's almost unstoppable. So even if it's one team with a lot of kind of clout behind it, other people sit up and take notice. We've got about 5 minutes left, so hopefully I'll get through the rest of these. So just very quickly, in terms of going through it, pipeline as code. just doing it the way probably a lot of you guys do it already. Team Concert, it's polling every hour, it's scanning COBOL, copybooks, all that kind of good stuff. We just make it easy for the developers. They don't need to know. That way they only get interested if the results come back and they see vulnerabilities. So Vera code is reporting like CVE numbers or issues around dynamic SQL, all those kind of good things. But really, we found that all of our mainframe apps have been scanned. That was like a big win for the company and for us too. And in terms of what it looks like, it just runs the same way as everything else. It's not very complicated for mainframe. Rosalind's kind of shown us how to do it. We're doing it. Have we finished it? No, we're on our way, I would say. And it just works the same as distributed. And maybe the clever bit, or maybe the insight that we had was to go straight to the pipeline as code. So rather than trying to build out lots of freestyle jobs and engineer a lot of technical debt out of the application into the Jenkins infrastructure and DevOps pipelines, is to make it very light. So our pipeline code really doesn't reference mainframe. Our plan is to really have a single mainframe pipeline. So rather than lots of developers having to write their own pipeline code, or it's almost like the common developer framework or platform that the guy from ITV spoke about yesterday. It's almost keep it simple, make it easy for the developers. If you're a mainframe developer, check the code in, and then it's scanned, it's built, it's compiled behind the scenes. Just keep it very simple. So in terms of running it as pipeline as code, probably all of you are aware of what it looks like. We just keep it like a declarative pipeline in Jenkins. We just keep it very high level, and it's almost like the more we understand it, the simpler it becomes. So we started off, we were down and dirty, we were kind of in the grass and the weeds there, and then we kind of abstracted it. So the pipeline, what we do is we put in all of the steps we'd like to do and comment out the ones that we haven't reached yet. So in terms of the UrbanCode Deploy step, we haven't done that yet. We're still using APTF. So the pipeline is not friction-free, but it shows our developers that the roadmap for the pipeline is the pipeline itself. So when you look into the pipeline, you can actually see the steps that the company will evolve and reach. And again, we kind of spin a lot of plates. We keep lots of things running. In terms of we push on what we can get some traction on, and other ones we hold back. So when we go through procurement or legal or licensing for certain technologies, that's not going to stop the pipeline. We just comment out the bits that we can't run yet. But if developers care to look at the pipeline, they can see where we're going with it. So it kind of builds that adoption. And really, as people onboard the Team Concert and they onboard the pipelines, they find it becomes easier. And that's really the big selling point or the value add for the developers. We make their job easier to do. It hasn't come easily. We've had to work with everyone from, I can't wait to work on this, can I be an early adopter, to people wanting to walk out of the training room and everything in between. But that was what we expected. So we did a lot of, again, coaching and mentoring. Again, we discovered paired programming for Z, where developers work together. When we printed off all of the manuals, we kind of looked to see who was finishing using the manuals first of all and what they were writing, annotating in the diagrams. So we wanted to know was, when we asked people, did you get it and did you have any issues? Everyone always said, no, it's fine, I completely understand it. But we looked very carefully to see who was still referring to the manual, and that was our kind of counterintuitive or anti-metric, where the people who finished the manuals and put them away and locked them in the desk, we knew they were well on their way. And for the people who wrote in the margins, we were interested to see, well, what was it that we needed to double down on training? So it was kind of a anti-metric. That was, again, something very counterintuitive what we heard this week, that our success was we almost gave our developers a waiver on being able to be measured with this. So just to finish up then, in the last couple of minutes here, as I said, we're getting really interested in using APIs on Mainframe. So again, we're following the same pattern, the same paradigm, where we build it out as infrastructure as code, pipeline as code, storing all the source code, all the build artifacts in Git or Team Concert, using Jenkins, Artifactory, UrbanCode. And again, it's almost becoming industry standard. That's the way you do it. So while some of the tools may be different, I guess the takeaway is Mainframe DevOps is mainstream. It's doable. No matter where you start, you're gonna progress with it. You'll be surprised as well in terms of the skills gap, that we have interns or new hires coming in without any Z experience. And we see this as a good way to actually get them onboarded. So it's a hard sell to have people learning ISPF and green screen. A much easier sell to say it's like a command line interface. It's like AWS. Just in finishing up then, the current work then is we've moved on to the newest version of Team Concert. We're doing sonar cube scanning soon, moving towards a single pipeline, and also trying to be more mindful as well in terms of the work that we do as Waterfall. So probably like most big shops, we don't find it easy, particularly on the Z side. There's a lot of culture that we're still working through, but that's a good thing. The tooling helps, and it's kind of a signal to our developers that we're interested. We think there's nothing worse than working on a platform that no one's talking about, no one's interested in. People are very interested in Mainframe at Allstate. That's not to say there are other great platforms that people use, but certainly Mainframe is back and visible in a way that maybe it wasn't a couple of years ago. So again, just to finish up, we're interested in Zoe, Visual Studio Code, and again, it's almost like a skunkworks or early adopter, where we're interested. Events like this, we encourage our developers to keep up to date with technology, to see what other folks are doing, what they're doing in the industry, to read the blog sites. So when an opportunity comes along to do a proof of concept or an evaluation or a POC, MVP, that people are ready to go. They're tooled up, they have the expertise to be able to do it. So what worked for us at Allstate? So leadership support, I think we have lots of it now, once we're successful. I think it was particularly with APIs as well, it's kind of gone from why are we doing it, to actually how soon can we build them. So I'll probably finish there. So that's me. So I'll call it a wrap. So thanks for your time today. Sorry I'm running slightly late, but appreciate the time.